everybody? Welcome back for another edition of Life in Sports. I'm your host, Javier Garcia. I got special guest back, David Gallman himself. We're here to talk about, we're not here to debate LeBron Jordan anymore. That's getting kind of over talked about, over hyped. What we're here to talk about today, one is going to be a finals preview, but the other thing is we're going to debate LeBron's greatness, so to speak. And what I mean by that is, on the timeline lately, especially after he beat the Celtics, there was so much. On one side, LeBron is the greatest ever. The other side is he's overrated, obviously not as good as Michael Jordan, whatever the case may be. And there's no gray area. There's no peace in the middle, man. So right now, me and David, we're going to kind of discuss some of that, maybe put some things in perspective for some people and for the fans and everything like that. And then we'll dissect the finals and have a winner prediction to finish up. So real quick, David, what do you think about LeBron's victory over the Celtics and what that means for his career? Was it an overhyped victory for him? What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, I just think that, Boston, after Gordon Hayward went down, first game of the season, their expectation went down. Obviously, having Kyrie Irving, they did even better than everybody thought they would. And when Kyrie went down, or when the expectations kind of went out the window. So anything that they did beyond getting to the playoffs and winning maybe a series or two, they went way beyond expectations. So I think going into that series, having home court advantage obviously helped them a lot, winning as many home games as they did. And obviously now losing game 7, because LeBron played as well as he did. I really thought that Boston choked that game away in game 7. I thought the way that they shot the ball from the floor, besides Tatum, I thought that they got away from some of the things that we're doing. They scored was like 77 points in that game 7. So I thought that had more to do with nerves, not having been in that situation before. And I just think Cleveland's veteran team had been there, regardless of how well or not well they played. That experience played a part in that game 7. So I think that kind of caught up to Boston not having a Kyrie to kind of lean on in that situation. But as far as that goes, he beat a rookie and Tatum, who's going to be a star in this league for many years. No Kyrie, no Hayward. And Brown is a second-year player. Horford, I really feel like he's a decent NBA player, but maybe a third, fourth option at best. So I thought what LeBron did was what he was supposed to do. I think obviously Kevin Love not playing in game 7, people will use that as a crutch by saying he's not going to be available for LeBron to help him. But I thought that really helped Cleveland, because I thought putting Gerald Green in there, putting Green in there in the starting lineup, Jeff Green in there, putting Jeff Green in there in the starting lineup, they gave them more versatility defensively. It gave them more activeness on the defensive end. And he obviously scored 19, 20 points in that game 7. Sure. So I thought that worked in a benefit for them because Love hadn't been playing that well. So again, like I said, I just think it was a little bit overhyped in what he did. His crew, the team that he has, isn't as talented as it has been in the past. But at the same time, I don't think that Boston team was a team that people thought should be able to push them to game 7.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying. All right, so you don't think that the Boston team should have pushed him to game 7, but when you look at all the pieces, you mentioned Tatum's a rookie. Mm-hmm. Jaylen Brown, he choked game 7. He did not ball out game 7. Had he played up to his best as he did in the previous games, it might have been a tougher time. With Kyrie in the game, you got to go with Boston. I would have probably picked Boston, even though I would be pulling for Cleveland. But I saw some comments, and some people were saying he did what he was supposed to do against a rookie. I don't necessarily see it as something that he was supposed to do. He overcame a lot. Even though Tatum's a rookie, the talent on Boston is better than on Cleveland. It just is. I don't know if you agree with me or not on that, but from top to bottom, except obviously for LeBron being who he is, but you got Marcus Smart. Nobody's going to out-hustle him. You even posted, he's a championship player. That's the kind of player you want on your team. The guy throws his body on the ground. Tatum, they probably should have featured him a little bit more. I just don't know if they had that trust and belief in him.
I thought Tatum showed up. I thought, Tatum did what he was supposed to do. Rozier goes 0 for 10 from 3.
Yeah, Rozier did. He didn't step his game up.
He's a guy that can go off for 28 or 30. So I thought the moment got big for some of these guys because they had never been in that position. And you take Tatum out of that because he is a star in this league. He is going to be a superstar in this league. So I think for him, he showed up because that's just who he is, and that's something that we expect to see from him. But again, like a Jaylen Brown, or Rozier. Horford didn't play. They did particularly well. That first quarter they came out. They had an opportunity to really put Cleveland away in that first quarter. They were up 12 or 13.
Yeah, they had a chance.
There were a couple of threes they missed that were wide open. Jaylen Brown had a couple of threes in that first quarter that could have really put them away. Cleveland shot the ball horrific in the first quarter, and so did Boston. So they kind of matched them on that. And like I said, I'm not taking anything away from LeBron, but what I'm saying is people always talk about his teammates and lack thereof their teammates, but I always go back to the fact that the teammates that he has is on him. I believe he's the general manager. I believe he's the head coach. He's the best player on the team. So for him to not want to sign an extension, for him to not want to commit long term, those are the kind of things that kept a Jimmy Butler, a Carmelo Anthony, Paul George away from wanting to come to Cleveland or sign, waive a no trade clause or say I'll sign an extension here. But because he wouldn't do those things, those guys didn't want to say, well, we're going to come here and play for this organization, and then LeBron leave. And the organization also said the same thing. Hey, we're not going to lose you again in free agency and be stuck with nothing. So they did, I thought, the best they could do. They went out and they got I thought it was a great deal in Isaiah. When they brought in the guys from Boston, I thought those were great pieces. Isaiah obviously was hurt. And then they flipped it around and got rid of Griffin, and they made another great deal, which at the time, no one trashed this deal. Everyone now is trashing how bad they're playing. No one trashed the deal when it went down. Everyone thought that was a great deal. They got Clarkson, they got Rodney Hood, they got Larry Nance Jr. Like, they got all these pieces, really, at the end of the day, for a guy that's a decent defender, a poor shooter, and a guy who had a bad hip.
Yeah.
And then now all of a sudden it turns around, these guys aren't performing well. Clarkson was one of the top in the league in three-point shooting. He's not doing that now. Rodney Hood was good for about 15 to 16, 18 a game. He's not doing that now. And Larry Nance Jr. is somebody that thought could be a spark off the bench. He's not doing that. So these guys are not doing what people thought they would do when the trade went down, and now they're getting crapped on. And obviously it's LeBron's teammates that are not coming through to help him. When I think at the end of the day, the teammates he has is because it's on him.
Now, I actually agree with almost everything you said. Now, I saw some people say, like, oh, well, LeBron handpicked this team. That might have been true in the past, but he didn't handpick this team due to all those variables you just stated. One, I highly doubt he anticipated Kyrie leaving. So I think he had full expectation on that. Maybe if that didn't catch him off guard, he would have had more inclination in conversations with those Paul Georges and Butlers to say, hey, look, Kyrie's not going to be here. But the timing of it was very, very poor. Yeah. So they did what they could to establish a roster. Isaiah Thomas was more hurt than what Danny Ainge let on. That's what I believe. So they made the best of the roster that they had, made the trades. I was all for the trades that they made in the middle part of the season because for all the reasons you just stated. So what I want to get into is the gray area, right? So I view LeBron as the second best, right? I still think it's Michael Jordan. Now, what I'm doing right now is I'm entertaining the idea that it's a debate because it is. Nobody can deny it. So you got your Jordan stands who are never gonna sway away from him. Then you got your Kobe's, you got your old school Magic Johnsons and stuff like that. But I saw so much, back and forth, and you're either a hater or you're jock riding LeBron. Where's the rationality in this whole thing? Where do you stand? In terms of what you see from a fan standpoint and the comments that are out there, just to kind of clarify for everybody, to have a central viewpoint on this thing instead of.
Well, I think the biggest thing is like you get into these discussions. You want to get into these discussions with people that are willing to look at it from both sides. But when you're dealing with the fans or the stands, as you call them, it's really hard to have that basic conversation with them as far as who the greatest of all time is. At the end of the day, they're set in stone that LeBron is the greatest. And for me, it's like, and this is the criteria that LeBron has set up. So LeBron's going to his 8th straight finals. LeBron hasn't played one game yet against Golden State, okay? And yet everyone, or his fans are saying he's the greatest of all time. He hasn't played one game yet against Golden State. So if he goes out there and lays an egg and they get swept, to me, or loses in 5, to me it's like, okay, so you're 3-6 in the NBA Finals. You have as many finals losses as Michael Jordan has rings. And then we always go back to the biggest issue I have with LeBron fans is this. So he gets all the credit for the 8 straight. He gets all, and then as soon as you say, well, the Eastern Conference is weak, what's the first thing they say? We can only play who's in front of you, right?
Yeah.
But then they make the same argument that Jordan had weaker competition. Well, didn't you just say you can only play who's in front of you? That's number one. Number two, if the Eastern Conference is weak as it has been, which we've talked about, wouldn't that mean that his road to the finals may be the easiest road 6 or 8 of the years that he's gone that anybody could possibly have to get there? Because you got to remember, when he was in Miami, he had Dwayne Wade, he had Chris Bosh. So he took an all-star from Toronto,
Ray Allen.
and then he had that. Then he had a Hall of Famer in Ray Allen, and then he had some great pieces around him. There's no debate that the teams that he played in at least 5 or 6 of the years of the 8 years he's gone straight, these teams aren't very good in the Eastern Conference. No superstars. This year he beat Victor Oladipo, great guy, had a hell of a year. All right, but Victor Oladipo, okay? So he beat Victor Oladipo's team. Then he beat Toronto. No one thought Toronto was going to win that series because of the way that they're set up. They don't have a superstar. They have 2 All-Stars, no superstars. Then he comes in and he plays a 20-year-old rookie. So for me, at the same time, it's like, yeah, you can only beat who's in front of you, but you can't have it both ways. MJ had to go through Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing, John Starks. When he got to the finals, so there's a whole level of what he had to do to get there. So you can't say on one hand, well, LeBron, gets to the finals, he gets all the credit to get there, but when he loses, it's always his teammates' fault.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the issue that I've always had with LeBron fans.
The eras are different, right? So Jordan never went against a team like Golden State where 1 through 5 can drain threes in your face. But LeBron doesn't have to go against a Charles Oakley or an Anthony Mason who's waiting for you to drive to the hole and catch his elbow if you want to. You know what I mean? So the eras are different for sure. So I got called a hater on LeBron the other day. Now, if anybody who knows me knows that I rock with Cleveland, I rock with LeBron, but I didn't follow LeBron to Miami. I just didn't because I didn't like the move. I hate how he did it. I hated how he did it. I didn't follow his career to Miami and become a Miami Heat fan. So let's just clarify that for from where I stand on that. But I got called a hater the other day because I was saying he played uninspired basketball. So that's kind of the gray area that I want to point to is, if you're a basketball fan, sometimes you got to exclude where you stand on either side of the fence. And it's not even just with LeBron, but just with basketball players, period. You got to, there has to be some rationality to this whole thing. So basically that's what I'm trying to get to here. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back on Life in Sports. Again, you're Javier Garcia. You got David Goldman. We'll be back to touch up on the finals preview. All right, so we're back. Again, this is Life in Sports. Javier Garcia, David Goldman as a special guest today. I got Yandel here with me. So we're going to jump into the finals preview. Round 4, right? You got round 1. You got Dellavedova, starting point guard for Cleveland because Kyrie got hurt. Kevin Love has his arm out of a socket, right?
Yeah.
So he's out, right? So Cleveland won 2 games. They've exhausted themselves in game 1 to win. I think it was game 1 or 2 that they won in Golden State. And after that, they had nothing left in the tank. They managed to win another game, but the series was over. Round 2, LeBron comes back 3-1. Best game 7 I've probably ever seen in my life. So much back and forth. It was amazing. Yeah. Round 3 is pretty much as easy as it gets for a finals run. Golden State ran right through them. They were like on a honeymoon phase with Kevin Durant, joining the roster. What do you think about round 4? I see a lot of fans not really being excited about this matchup. I personally am excited because at the end of the day, for any championship, no matter what sport it is, you want the best in the East, best in the West, or best from either side. You want the 2 best teams paired up, and that's what we have. So what do you think about round 4?
I mean, I'm excited. I think that, when you really talk about it, at the end of the day, Golden State, was the best team in the Western Conference. You could talk about, Chris Paul not playing Game 7, all these things. But injuries play a part in any run that you have. This is an opportunity to kind of see what both teams have. It's funny because people pick or they pick against wanting, LeBron James to get to the finals. But I really believe if Toronto or Philadelphia or Boston got to the finals, I don't think people would have been as interested. I think LeBron, not nearly as hated, obviously, with the stuff that happens, with Mayweather outside of the ring. But I think people tune in to either watch him win or lose, even if
Yeah.
they're not a fan.
100%.
So I think knowing that LeBron James is in the finals, and your ratings are going to go up. And then from there, you take the juggernaut of the Golden State Warriors and what they've been able to accomplish and the things they've been able to do. And I really feel like the Golden State Warriors team has been constructed based off really what happened with LeBron James going to Miami. I mean, you really can't fault them. They drafted Steph Curry, they drafted Klay Thompson, they drafted Draymond Green. You know, they drafted these guys, 3 of their 4 best players, and then they went out and recruited a guy in Kevin Durant. You can knock them for whatever you want to, but anybody would say, I'll take Kevin Durant on my team. So you can't get mad at the best team. They go 73-9 and lose to LeBron. It's always to do what? Go out in the offseason and get better.
Yeah, for sure.
So they one-upped everybody, and they said, we have a 73-9 team. We've got the greatest backcourt of all time, shooting backcourt of all time. We're going to go add one of the greatest offensive players that ever played the game. So I think they did that. So I think this series, I've seen every expert on ESPN. No one is picking Cleveland to win. Obviously, this is one of the biggest lopsides in NBA Finals history. I think that Cleveland is going to play better than what people expect them to.
Absolutely.
I think the games will be more competitive than people expect them to be. I don't think it'll go more than 5 or 6 games, but I do expect Cleveland to come out and play much, much better than what people are going to give them credit for.
Yeah. With that being said, I truly, truly believe Cleveland is going to play better than what anybody expects. I think the game, they went 7 with Indiana. They went 7 with Boston. They swept Toronto. We called that before it even started. But the more games that this team plays together, the better they're going to get. Whether they won or lost, because they didn't have enough time. They don't have cohesiveness like Golden State. Golden State, they know where each other is going to be on every single occasion, every time up and down the court. They know exactly where they're going to be. Cleveland doesn't have that. They're still trying to figure things out. So the more games they play, the better they're going to be.
Yeah.
So with that being said, let's kind of fast forward to Golden State versus Houston. When Iguodala went out, you saw a lot of vulnerability from Golden State's defense.
Yeah.
Iguodala's out again. He can't. When Iguodala's in the game, he makes such a matchup problem for LeBron James. And then Golden State can rotate their defenders. They can hide Steph Curry on JR because they're not going to run any plays for J.R. Smith.
Yeah.
You can kind of just hide Steph Curry in the background and rotate Draymond, Klay, Iguodala, and whoever the other person is in the lineup on LeBron, and then you can pick and roll and do whatever you want. So with Iguodala out, man, that presents a huge opportunity for Cleveland to take advantage of, especially if he's going to be out multiple games in the series. So I think what's going to happen tomorrow night on Thursday is that Cleveland's going to come out swinging. I don't think it's going to be any kind of fill-out game that LeBron supposedly had with Boston or whatever the case was with that. I don't think that's the case. I think they're going to put their foot on the gas and they're going to execute at a high level. I truly expect them to win Game 1. I think Iguodala is that much of a factor, as you saw with Houston. As soon as he went out, Houston, took full advantage of those opportunities. And I honestly believe if Chris Paul had played, we might have had a Cleveland-Houston matchup.
Yeah, well, I think the one thing we're going to find out as well in the finals is how good Houston was. I think that them having home court advantage gave them a huge boost in that series. I think Golden State came in and established themselves in Game 1 to let them know what time it was. I think the biggest downfall that Golden State has is Golden State. I think it depends on what mentality they have when they come in the game. They have a tendency to come into games and take a night off. Now, the one thing they have going for them, or that Golden State fans can say they have going for them, is they're playing against LeBron James. They're playing against Cleveland. Draymond's going to have that chip on his shoulder. He still remembers that 73-9 season where he got suspended for Game 5. And I believe, had he not been suspended for Game 5, they would have won that series in 5, and that would have been over with. But that's a toss-up. That's an argument for a different day. But I think that because it is LeBron James and they know how great he is and they don't want to lose him, I think that's going to give some of that added needed fuel. Yeah. Same thing for Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant has been years being told that he's not as good as LeBron James. He has an opportunity now to win his second title, to be one behind LeBron. He has the odds-on favorite to win Finals MVP, which would be his second, which then he would still be one behind LeBron James and Finals MVPs. So I think his motor will be going as well. Andre Iguodala, to me, I think he's more important factor when it comes to just being on the floor. With him off the court, what you've seen is how terrible Looney can be at times. how inconsistent Swaggy P can be at times.
Oh, for sure. Their rotations are all
I think
jacked up.
the key guy for them in game 1 and game 2, if Iguodala is not going to play, is going to be Sean Livingston. I think Sean Livingston's length will give them some matchups that they can have defensively on switching. So I think Sean Livingston's going to play a huge factor for those guys off the bench. Other than that, like I think, Iguodala, I want to say, in the 16 games or so that he's played against LeBron in the finals, when he's guarded LeBron as a primary defender, LeBron's averaging like 30, 10, and 10.
Yeah.
So I think the statistics tell you, like, man, that's not a matchup. But I think what happens is, as a basketball player, anybody that's played a game of basketball, you can still score 30, but there's certain defenders that make it extremely difficult for you to get them. I think Iguodala is one of those mental things. Iguodala's on the floor, he switches. Now LeBron knows, I've really got to go with my A game against this guy. The other thing is, like I said, we go back to the Houston series. Houston had Trevor Ariza. Houston had P.J. Tucker, defensively to throw at Kevin Durant. Cleveland doesn't have that luxury. And on top of that, like I said, they had Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon had a hell of a series.
Yeah.
He was a lot of times the reason that they were in those games. And then for the first 5 games, they had Chris Paul. So you look at a Chris Paul, a P.J. Tucker, a Capella. Houston was a damn good basketball team.
They were
hungry
too.
Home court, and they were hungry.
They were hungrier.
So I think when you look at that factor and the fact that Golden State was able to survive that series, I think now we're going to find out how good Golden State really is, how good Houston was, and we're going to get a real measuring stick of how good Cleveland was going through the competition they had. Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, it could be an easy sweep, or it can be one of those situations where Golden State kind of just plays around with them, loses a game here or there, and it goes 5 or 6.
Complacency definitely has set in Golden State. They just know they're so good, right? The whole roster is very talented. You saw that in the Houston series a little bit, and that's not to discredit Houston. But what I also saw was Kevin Durant in one of the fourth quarters go 1 for 5 with no assists.
Yeah.
Then he had another fourth quarter where he had 0 points and 0 assists. You had Draymond Green in game 7, I want to say. He looked terrible. He hesitated on his shots. He just didn't look confident at all. He had multiple turnovers, silly turnovers. So is that going to translate into this next series? I don't know. I think, it's hard to say. We're going to find out, we're going to find out on Thursday night. But I think the door is wide open for Cleveland. I don't think it's as obvious of a victory or a sweep or a 5-game series as people make it out to be. I think you're going to get Cleveland's best shot, and I think Golden State's vulnerable right now. Now, not vulnerable to the point where, I think Cleveland's going to dominate or anything like that, but the opportunity is there.
Well, I think you go back. I mean, you and I have been watching the game for a long time. We've been a fan. Obviously, I'm a huge Kobe fan. It almost reminds me of going back to when the Lakers used to play Sacramento.
Oh yeah,
and the Lakers would squeak by Sacramento, and they'd beat them in 6 or 7 in the Western Conference Final. I mean, some of the best basketball games I've ever seen were the Lakers, early 2000 Lakers, 2001, 2002, when they're going against those Sacramento teams that had the Chris Webbers and White Chocolate, and they
Doug
had
Christie,
Doug Christie,
yeah.
and Mike Bibby when he came along after they traded Jason Williams. Then they went through those battles, and you're like, man, they look beatable. And they'd get to the finals, and they'd crush the Eastern Conference. They'd crush New Jersey twice. They'd crush Philadelphia. So to me, and obviously those teams didn't have LeBron James. So LeBron James is good to give you at least one game.
Yeah,
I mean, he really is. But I think what happens is, I really do believe in my heart, Houston was the best basketball team this year. And I think Golden State, with the luck of the draw and the injury, their experience, and Houston's inability to make adjustments, and that's what we've talked about that. We talked about that in the last segment together. D'Antoni's lack of adjustments when the 3 ball is not falling. They missed 27 straight shots at home.
27 straight threes.
Not on the road. They missed 27 straight threes at home. So to me, that goes back to the fact that Golden State had been there. They had done that. They had the pedigree. So I think now you take that scare, and Golden State goes, man, I think deep down in their heart they go, man, we really could have and should have lost that series. So I think now they turn their focus to Cleveland. They're back home for their first 2 games. I think that woke them up.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, the one thing, if I was a Golden State fan, that would really piss me off watching them play is, like you said, their complacency, their arrogance. We're going to play when we decide to play. We're going to play when we feel like it. And if you do that against a LeBron James team, and Curry twists an ankle, or KD goes down with a knee injury, which we've shown that could happen, this series can go either way. So again, like I said, I picked Golden State in 5 because it's hard for me to believe that they went through them as easy as they did last year when they had Kyrie Irving. They have lack of depth. They're not playing well. Cleveland's not playing well. And I know what you're saying about Golden State, but you got to really look at Houston and see the pieces they had.
Yeah.
They matched up beautifully against
well.
Golden State. They had 2 perimeter defenders that can guard. They can give Kevin Durant some issues. They had a guy off the bench that could score 30 on any given night. They had an MVP candidate that can give you 38 and 8. You had, a guy that was in the MVP running, and Chris Paul was one of the greatest point guards of all time. You had home court advantage. You had all these things line up for them, and they couldn't get done. So I really find it hard to believe that a J.R. Smith, or a Tristan Thompson, or these guys are going to be able to give LeBron what those guys gave James Harden, which ended up failing him in Game 7. But at that point, they had given him as much as they could. Because like I said, Eric Gordon is a real big reason why they got into a Game 7.
Big time reason. Now, win or lose, and when it comes to LeBron in Cleveland, do you think he stays?
I mean, I think that's tough. I mean, he hasn't committed to this point, and I think he might be tired of the touch and go. Like, but with LeBron, being able to cover the league as many years as I did in building relationships with people that are around him or people that cover the league that know him well, say the same thing. He really kind of keeps that tight. Like, he always has a plan. He always plans things out. But they're saying, like, at this point right now, he hasn't even really thought about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, obviously Philadelphia's floating around. LA's floating around. I think he'd be foolish to go out west, even if he gets a Paul George or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Why have to compete in the same, conference as a Houston or San Antonio and Golden State? If I was LeBron, and I had said it all year long, and I would go to Philadelphia. If you're going to leave, I think Philadelphia is a great destination because I think he's got to find somewhere where he can maximize. We always talk about like an NFL, like a quarterback getting a running back that can extend their career.
Yeah.
And I think what he's got to be able to do is find another teammate that can extend his career and maybe, do some of the things that he does. And no one does that better in the NBA than Ben Simmons. So I think the hardest part is going to be imagining LeBron playing off the ball. But we all thought that Houston wasn't going to work with James Harden and Chris Paul, and they worked beautifully.
It did.
So if those two can do it, the mind of LeBron James and his IQ would be able to do it. I would obviously think they would probably bring in a different head coach. I'm not really fond of the head coach that they have.
Brown, right? His name Brown. He just got an extension.
So
he's gonna be around for a little bit.
So I don't know how that's gonna work. But again, LeBron likes having coaches that aren't necessarily the best in the league.
Yeah.
So he kind of runs it the own way he goes. But I think with Embiid, you bring JJ Redick back. They have the role pieces. They have the pieces there. Not only that, but it's almost process of elimination. If you join Philadelphia, now they're not somebody you have to worry about. Now it comes down to Boston, and that's pretty much it because I've just written off Toronto unless they make major moves.
No, they're done. They're done. It's funny when you mention he doesn't necessarily want to have the best coaches. Ty Lue, after they won Game 7, was naming off his coaching staff and thanking them, and he forgot to mention LeBron James. So I just thought that was kind of funny. I was like, oh, you're forgetting somebody here, guy.
Well, I always said like a LeBron James head coach, almost like an offensive coordinator for Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he's got to make adjustments, but at the end of the day, you have one of the greatest minds in NBA history on the basketball court at all times. So really his job is to just make sure to figure out the rotation. And that's really what Tyronn needs to do is figure out the rotation and from there getting guys to make shots. But I thought T. Lue did a good job in the series that he was in with Boston. But again, like I said, at the end of the day, Game 7 just comes down to making shots. Boston was at home. They missed a ton of shots. Houston was at home. They missed a ton of shots.
It's crazy. Both losing sides chose Game 7 to have their worst shooting performances. Last topic. Knowing what each roster has, Golden State, Cleveland. Golden State is supposed to beat them in 4 or 5. Hands down, they have the roster to do it. They have the skill to do it. They have the All-Stars. They're supposed to beat them. Cleveland has LeBron, and then he has, Tristan, Kevin Love. He has some role players.
Mm-hmm.
But it's clear as day that Cleveland's not supposed to win this series. So what would it say if Cleveland managed to do this? If LeBron managed to achieve something of this nature where he beats a Golden State with the roster that's established in Cleveland, what does that say to his legacy? And would that be enough to finally put him top of the throne, period?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, as high as LeBron could get on the ranking for me is 2. I've always said, Mike's number 1, but we talked about it a little bit earlier. We've just glossed over Tim Duncan and his 5 championships. Kareem's got his 6 championships. The Dream has his 2. I mean, so there's guys out there that have, Larry Bird. So for me, I think if he was able to accomplish this for putting himself in the 4th, beating all these Hall of Famers, I think it's really hard. It's really, for me, I would say it's really hard not to say that. It's really hard for me to say that because, like I said, I'm a huge Kobe fan. I've got LeBron right now in my top 5. But again, like I said, it's really hard to, you have to say if he wins this one, to beat the team that he beat to get to that point for his 4th and to win his 4th Finals MVP, which only I believe it's Michael that has more than 3 Finals MVPs.
Yeah.
He would tie that. It's really hard to make that argument, but for me to make him number 1, I really just don't think, and it's not being a hater, I just don't think he can get that number 1 spot for Michael. And that goes back to that 2011, 2012 or so, that series against the Dallas Mavericks in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, that was probably his worst
so
one,
for me, you think about with Dirk Nowitzki, you can almost flip it. Dirk Nowitzki's second best player was Jason Terry, who came off the bench. Then he had a J.J. Barea, and then he obviously had a 10. We don't want to. He had Tyson Chandler, and Tyson Chandler I think is a very, very good player. But when you look at that constructed roster, he went through the Lakers, he went through Oklahoma City and the Blazers, got to the finals. Then he goes against Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, Chris Bosh, and those guys. And he beat them. And I think what happens is when you look at that finals and the way that LeBron did not perform, the fact that he disappeared so many times.
Took away from his legacy,
it's almost like time heals wounds. And it's like, well, you don't want to hate on the man, but it's like, wait a second. MJ never went to a game 7 in the finals. He never had a meltdown in the finals. And everybody always brings up, well, what did he do before Scottie got here? Those are all valid arguments, but we never talk about that. We're talking about the finals, the biggest stage, the end-all, be-all.
Yeah.
When Michael got there 6 times, he went 6-0.
He did go 6 for 6, but everybody forgets the struggles he had to get there in the early stages of his career. He didn't get to the finals until year 7, and then from there he went 6 for 6. He probably could have went 9 for 9, but
and we'll never know. But here's the thing, and we talk about that, and people like LeBron James fans are so quick to say, well, Kevin Durant went 7 through 19, but I think it was weak. I think Kevin Durant has every right to do what he wants to do for his career. Who am I to bash him for what he wants to do for his career? He didn't want to play with a guy like Russell Westbrook. He wanted to go play for a team
didn't want to play for LeBron.
He didn't want to play for LeBron. So he wanted to go somewhere where and obviously he made the right decision. He made the right choice. He was MVP last year. That worked for him. But people are forgetting that, we talk about Michael. Michael had struggles with the Boston Celtics. He had struggles with the Detroit Pistons. He finally beat the Pistons. Pistons didn't retire. He didn't leave and go join. He finally got through and beat the Pistons. Yeah. What people fail to realize is LeBron, when he finally broke through to win a championship, it's after he joined 2 other guys that were top 5 picks in his draft class. So you almost equate that to Charles Barkley saying, you know what, I can't win. I'm going to go ahead in my prime and join Michael and the Dream. So I think people are overlooking that fact. Those were 2 top 5 players that he went and joined. Now, that's not a 73-9 team. I'm not comparing it. I completely get that. But the whole train started with LeBron making that move. And I think you can't get mad for Kevin Durant to one-upping him and going to a better team.
You can't get mad at Kevin Durant, but LeBron also made that move because Boston made a power move when they, acquired the people that they made. But, it's kind of crazy, too, because on one side we're talking about individual greatness, and the other side we're talking about team greatness. And basketball is a team game. As far as individuality, it's not necessarily hurting their legacy, but like Kevin Durant, he's no longer in discussion as top player in the world. He kind of is because he is he's probably number 2. Steph probably top 5 for sure. But nobody's talking about individual greatness on that roster. You're talking about team greatness versus individual greatness. It's a hell of a story. I'm looking forward to the end to the finals Thursday night. Tune in. I gotta go. I'm going with Cleveland. I'm gonna say it. I'm going with Cleveland. I'm rocking the sea. Time to defend the land. I know my guy here, David Goldman's going for Golden State. Golden State in 5 or 6.
Man, I'm gonna say Golden State in I'm gonna say Golden State in 5.
Wrong. Cleveland in 7. Cleveland in 7, baby. It's another edition of Life in Sports. Again, I'm Javier Garcia, David Gallman, special guest. Thank you for coming on today, sir. Everybody enjoy the show. Tune in, and we'll discuss it later. All right. Have a good night.